Hi, this is Issa Nakazawa, and we're here with Voices of the Community at the Arts for a Better Bay Area Summit 2023. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Glad to be here, Issa.
You don't need an introduction, but can you tell for the folks who don't know who you are and why you're here today?
My name is Jonathan Moscone, and I am the Executive Director of the California Arts Council. And so I'm sort of here to provide what I know and see and hope for the future from a state perspective. But I come from the city, so my heart is here.
Yeah, I just want to say congratulations. That was an incredible keynote, and thank you for speaking to us right after you got off stage.
Oh.
One of the things that I really was moved that you spoke about was just like the thriving creative economy, but also this idea of putting our artists to work. Can you say a little bit for folks who didn't get to attend, like what was so essential about that point in your keynote today around connecting artists and the idea of like putting them to work?
Well, I think a lot of it is about what we would call the taxonomy or the classification of artists as super valuable and special and important, but not valued from from a language that is compared to a nurse or a teacher or someone who works in a grocery store, right? These are people who actually work, right? So we both need to change the narrative, right? And not just artists, but the people who actually support artists, cultural workers, and not just artists themselves, but culture bearers. And that's one thing. But more importantly, what we need to do is to develop the pathways for them to actually have more sustained employment than, say, a grant.
Yeah.
Right? Because grants are great.
Right.
But they're not a living. You cannot make a living off of that. And I work in the funding world now, and I don't know if I would feel like I left this job in a good place if all I did was just make more grants.
It's not a connected, coherent life. It's
That's
just
right.
these like one-off atomized opportunities.
And it feels like it's anxiety provoking more than it is assuring, because you have to go for the next one and the next one. And so, there are so many pathways that we're not taking advantage of from a state perspective to support artists. I look at teaching artists, which are probably the clearest indicator of like a job that an artist has.
Right.
And now that Prop 28 passed, $1 billion for teaching artists in this state. That's pretty great. But what about artists in the health industry? There are so much data that proves that when artists are working in hospitals, they reduce the number of days that somebody stays in the hospital, which saves money for the hospital and insurance companies. And if you pay people to do that, you're paying people to support the economy, reduce costs.
Absolutely.
I know that doesn't sound sexy, but I'll tell you, this is our opportunity. I don't want to rely on whether we have money in the budget or not to be able to support artists. So that's where I stand on it. I know the governor supports this because he believes very strongly in the creative economy, creative workforce. The legislature does. So I think the time is right now, especially during a time of tough budget, where we have to leverage resources, work with Caltrans, work with Department of Health and Human Services, all of our colleagues. How do we bring arts to them to benefit their work? And by doing so, provide work for our artists.
Yeah, I love your articulation of the value and how I think that gets really misplaced. And right now there has been I think a new pressure put on artists to be so hyphenated when I think if we're honest, this push to make artists administrators can also make our creative practice suffer because we're so busy putting on all of the hats, which, I'm 36 and I feel like in my lifetime I saw a real shift to master of none, as an only viable way for us to be living in these cities. But what suffers is our actual creative practice.
How do you link those together?
Yes.
Right? How do you link your creative practice and your need to have a job into the same place? That I look forward to figuring out. There are a lot of people working on this already.
Right.
So I'm just here to use the platform and to use the tools that I have, along with the agency's intelligent staff, really incredible staff, to figure these things out because all they care about is supporting artists too.
Right.
And so I think we'll get somewhere. I know we'll get somewhere if we just put our heads to it.
I think so too. And one thing that a lot of the speakers spoke about tonight was this idea of the power of narrative, right? Which can go in different directions. The narrative of the doom loop or of San Francisco's dead, and us internalizing that is kind of an example of how narrative can be powerful, but also harmful.
It's totally.
Yeah. What is a narrative that you feel strongly about right now that you feel is more important than the narrative that you're seeing projected in the media about San Francisco, specifically in the arts?
Yeah. I think a lot of the narrative that we mirror our own narrative, right? So we're sending it out worse than they're sending it to us, right? Is we need to have clean streets, meaning We need to take care of the people who are experiencing deep, profound, unstable lives on the streets. But we also need the creative life to emerge from this. A clean city is not what San Francisco is. San Francisco is a messy city. It's politically messy. It's diverse. It fights amongst itself. It is San Francisco, and it's never not going to be. So let's lean into the right kind of messy of San Francisco. And artists can get messy. So let's get messy. Let's celebrate all the things that made us resilient after the earthquake, after Jonestown, after my father and Harvey Milk were killed, during and after AIDS was at the height. How did we go through that, and how did we get through it? We got messier and more resilient. That's the narrative that I have.
I love that. I feel like that's like reclaiming the mess.
That's right.
And then my last question is like, what's something that you are personally looking forward to about today? I know you just took the stage and you probably have to go, but what is the meaning for you about this specific convening?
Part of it is to see my people who I have not spent time with, these amazing individuals. I just love them. Just seeing people just makes me smile. But I'm really anxious to get in there and listen to the work that Julie Baker, who's one of our grantees and runs Californians for the Arts, is on the panel of developing sort of the workforce plan. Okay. Because that's something that I'm really tracking. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for speaking to us, and great job tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.